Welcome to 3Ps in a Pod, our podcast about pediatrics, parenting, and the perimenopause. Today's topic will be Perimenopause 101, the basics, clarifying this chaotic chapter in a woman's life. My name is Claudia Gray. I am a pediatrician, healthcare practitioner, and also a mother of four. And I happen to be in the perimenopause too.
I'm Christy Herselman, founder of The Chat, writer, author, speaker, and parent to 3 teenagers. And I am so excited we have finally got into this conversation. Both of us in the throes of perimenopause, as with so many parents that will be listening online, and people who are not parents who are listening online, because we all go through this. You know, we get irritated more quickly. Our periods are all over the place. A little bit of body fat around the belly starting to come, and we haven't changed any way we eat or doing the same amount of exercise, but suddenly so much is changing. This thing called menopause. So as a start, please talk us through what is the difference between perimenopause and menopause, because this is confusing.
So definitions are all important in this case. So the menopause is the pause of menstruation. Basically, menopause by definition is if you've had no menstrual periods for 12 months.
Okay.
If you've had surgery, for example, your ovaries been taken out or you've had a hysterectomy, it obviously doesn't apply to you. And if you've had medical treatment such as chemotherapy, which has knocked out your bits and bobs, then it also doesn't apply. So in a natural menstrual picture, if you've had no periods for 12 months, you're in the menopause. So it is a point in time marking reproductive years, non-reproductive years. And obviously it's not just a physical shift, it's a whole biological and societal shift as well. And worldwide, the average age of the menopause is 45 to 55 years.
Okay.
Now the perimenopause, which I think should be called the perimenopause because it's such a spicy time, is the time leading up to the menopause, because menopause basically means no more ovulation, so really reduced estrogen production, which is the female reproductive hormone. The perimenopause is the time leading up to the menopause when your ovaries are starting to get lazy, not making as many eggs, not producing as much estrogen. They might have a good week, they might have a bad week. That's why blood levels are not that, useful in the perimenopause, because it's literally all over the show, as are you. As a woman, literally all over the show, because of these fluctuating hormones. And it's been called the hormonal zone of chaos.
Oh my
the
God.
Perimenopause can start in your late 30s, early 40s. It can last months up to a decade.
Wow.
And I think a big problem, Christy, is that we often don't realize when we're 41, 42, that we might already be in the perimenopause, in that period leading up eventually to the menopause. And of course, this time can be really disruptive to our personal lives, our professional lives. The reduction in estrogen also has important health consequences. So there's a lot to talk about, and women really need to be aware, and so do men, because they're going to see a change in the women in their lives. We need to be aware of it to optimize our health and our quality of life.
Wow, lazy ovaries. That's the first time I've heard that very medical concept. But I can't believe it's actually as early as your 30s. I'm thinking of women with very young children, thinking, why am I going through these changes? What's happening to me? Thinking, because honestly, before we had this conversation, if you had asked me to guess, when does perimenopause start? I would say 45 to 50, and then I would say menopause 50 to 60.
Yeah.
But actually it really is young.
A lot younger.
And from my very limited knowledge of menopause and perimenopause, it's all about estrogen, right? It's all about a drop in your estrogen. And so before you and I had a conversation, my thinking was this is just going to affect my reproductive system.
Yeah, sure.
But it's not just your reproductive system, is it?
No. So estrogen and progesterone are both important female hormones, and they both fluctuate during the perimenopause. But let's focus on estrogen because it actually has really important functions all over the body. It's not all about babes and boobs.
Sure.
Estrogen receptors, which accept estrogen, where estrogen has an action, are found, of course, in your uterus and your breasts, but also in your muscle tissue, in your bones, in your fat tissue, in your liver, in your pancreas, and wait for it, in your brain.
Oh my gosh.
So, for example, if we've got estrogen receptors in our muscles and our estrogen is reducing, our muscle mass will decline in the perimenopause. If we have estrogen receptors in our brain and our estrogen is fluctuating, our mental sharpness might change. If we've got estrogen receptors in our fat, while our estrogen is high, we've got a lovely female pear-shaped figure. But in the perimenopause, we have a reduction. We become more androgenic. We become more male-like with a central tire and an apple shape.
Wow. It's so fascinating to me because, you know, when you think of perimenopause as just, okay, it's a point where it's going to be increasingly difficult for me to fall pregnant and my periods are going to stop. But now as you explain this to me, it makes so much sense as to why it makes you feel all these different ways, why it impacts your weight gain, and a whole bunch of other things. So perimenopausal symptoms. How do I know I'm going through perimenopause? Is it just about periods or are there other signs?
There are so many other signs, and some of them are quite non-specific, which could be the same signs if you're depressed or if you've got a virus and you're very fatigued for a long time. And that's why it's often not recognized very early, because it's not just about hot flashes and sweating and night sweats. There's so much more to it that happens so much earlier. So very often the initial signs of things changing in your menstrual cycle, in your estrogen cycle, are, I'm just not feeling quite myself. I don't feel like I can cope with what I used to cope with. Juggling suddenly becomes overwhelming. And then, of course, that might be, you know, also go hand in hand with periods that become a little bit more irregular. Mine became close together initially and then further apart. So there can just be changes. You can have a little bit of trouble sleeping. Your mood can change fairly dramatically. You can become irritable, depressed, just mood swings, have a short fuse. You no longer tolerate idiots. Your joints can be sore. Your hair can thin. You can get fatigued. You can get more headaches. You can have problems with your bladder and your vagina. Everything is a little bit dry and doesn't work as well as it used to. You can gain weight. So your metabolic rate, unfortunately, drops together with your insulin sensitivity and can cause that typical middle-age spread. Your bowel habits can change. You can tend to constipation. Cognitively, you're going through this brain fog. And then the hot flashes and night sweats, which are what we call vasomotor symptoms involving our blood vessels dilating in response to hormonal changes, those are fairly late changes. So that's not the start of perimenopause. That's usually well into perimenopause.
Oh my goodness, this feels a little unfair. It feels like women are going through a lot.
First, we need to have periods. Then we need to bear children. Then we need to look after the children. And then we need to go through this, hey, Christy?
This is a lot. And I have memories of, I went into perimenopause quite early. And I have memories of nights where I would get off my bed and lie on the tiles of my bedroom just to bring my body temperature down, because that feeling of getting hot from the inside out was so intense. And you add Durban humidity to that and you feel like you're in a furnace. And so there is so much that's going on, and it has a massive impact on so much, on our cognitive abilities, on our relationships, on our work. And ironically, we're at this time where so many people need and want so much from us, and we actually have so much to offer in terms of wisdom and, you know, empathy and relationships, but sometimes just couldn't be bothered. I just don't have the energy.
I actually think that women peak in their functionality in society at this age, Christy, because actually we've got so much experience and so much wisdom, and we've lost our naivety. We've well educated. We've brought up children to a large extent. But yet we kind of just fizzle out in society, often because we're tired, we don't know what's going on, we stop jobs, we job hop, we say we can't cope anymore. So there really are so many unspoken issues that are often not talked about, often not educated about, and that's why women are often misdiagnosed and even mismanaged. Yet women over 50 make up a third of the female population. So it's a large proportion.
That's a lot.
And what makes me so fascinated and so disappointed at the same time is that it often comes at this time, which I call the Bermuda Triangle of life. So you're going through the jolly perimenopause and you're not feeling at your best. Your children are teenagers and they're not feeling their best and they're trying you. Your parents are becoming elderly and need you in different ways. And there's sometimes deaths in the family. And then your husband is going through his own midlife crisis and suddenly doing triathlons and is never at home to deal with all this chaos. So, tongue in cheek, despite all these annoying and sometimes debilitating symptoms, the perimenopause, however, also comes with real medical risks.
Wow.
It's often the silent things that we don't even know about which happen as a result of the reduction in estrogen.
And as you said earlier, this estrogen is not just about your reproductive system. It's about your entire body.
Yeah.
And I honestly, when we think things are just a normal part of life, we don't pay much attention to the health risks. But can you talk us through some of the health risks that we need to pay attention to at this time in our lives?
Absolutely. And we can all explain most of them just with this reduction in estrogen. So our cardiovascular risk, our risk of heart attacks, angina, ischemic heart disease, increases during the perimenopause and menopause before we are protected, and women have a much lower rate of heart disease than men. This changes. Now, from this point onwards, our risk is as high as the man next door.
Wow.
So body composition, we've talked about that. Estrogen causes this lovely female type figure with a narrow waist and the wide hips. That's protective against cardiometabolic disease. When we start putting on our tires, we start having the same risks as men. We also start having metabolic consequences. We start having increased risk of certain cancers that are related to fat distribution, such as breast and colon and endometrial. We talked about bone estrogen. The bone density can reduce quite significantly during the perimenopause. So we really have to work on that by doing jumping exercises, making sure we have enough calcium and vitamin D in the diet. And we can lose muscle mass. Our estrogen receptors in our muscles are no longer tickled as much.
Wow.
We can become sarcopenic, which is the fancy word for reduction in muscle mass. Once again, something we have to work on.
Sure.
Our cholesterol profile even changes. We produce more of the bad cholesterol, LDL, and less of the good cholesterol, HDL, because our liver is affected by the perimenopause. Our skin changes. We become old. We lose collagen. Our faces start to sag. Our hair becomes thin. Our pelvic support muscles weaken. We all know that. Suddenly jumping on a trampoline is not a very nice experience, so we can have an increased risk of bladder infections and prolapse, etc., etc.
So you're telling us we need to jump, but it's hard to jump.
Yeah, that sounds like most of life. Hey?
Wow. And, from someone who leads an organization called The Chat, I think I really need to ask, does it impact our sexual health?
Unfortunately, yes, Christy, for many reasons, actually. Not only the physical, like, okay, the vagina's a bit more dry, the bladder's a bit more irritable, so it's uncomfortable. We also just have less desire during the perimenopause. Often after the perimenopause, that desire can come back. And also, our whole attitude to life seems to shift when we are in the perimenopause, menopausal stage. I find I can't suffer fools anymore. I just can't tolerate nonsense. I'm no longer trying to please everybody, including my own husband, I guess. So the woman's attitude changes.
Wow.
She becomes like, this is me. Take me as I am. I'm not bowing down to everyone's needs anymore.
Okay. Sure. So that because as women, to be sexually intimate with someone comes with an emotional intimacy. And sometimes that's affected during menopause, is our emotional intimacy with our spouse, because it can cause friction when we kind of feeling like that.
We're already feeling we can't cope. We are tearful. And very often the men in our lives do not understand this. They just see us as being moody and jolly difficult. So if we educate the men as to how they need to deal with us, it might also be very helpful in navigating this part of life.
Can we please do a podcast on that at some point?
Absolutely. I think we should. We should. Yeah.
And so it is a reproductive milestone. It is a point, we're moving from one chapter to another, but it's a whole body,
It's a
emotion,
whole body experience.
body, mind, everything
Yep.
experience.
It's a whole body shift, including medical consequences. And that's really my take-home pearl message for today is perimenopause is a whole body thing.
Okay.
Our brains, our reproductive systems, our relationships, but also our risk of certain diseases.
Yeah.
So it is something that we need to educate ourselves on and we need to act upon.
Yeah.
And I think in the next episode, we're going to talk about some management strategies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Claudia. And I think, that's such a beautiful pearl is that we do need to take care of ourselves. And we are going to talk about that. But I think just as we wrap up this episode, remember that we've spoken about a lot of the things that are going to happen, but it comes at a time where as women, we are often prioritizing the needs of other people, the needs of people in our workplaces, in our homes. People are demanding a lot of us. And so we are going to have some great tips in the next episode, but I think just to remember that you are really important. And, the saying that says you can't pour from an empty cup. And prioritizing yourself in this season for what you need is incredibly important.
Yeah, and I think to me in the perimenopause and menopause, as I said, we've got so much to give, but our cup is almost half empty for physical reasons and biological reasons. And that needs to be taken into consideration. So we have to work really, really hard at keeping that cup a little bit more filled so we can flow over to others as well and give this great wisdom and generosity and experience that we actually have at this time of our lives.
Absolutely. And knowledge is power. And honestly, as a woman in perimenopause, just having this conversation with you has made me feel empowered. So I hope that has done the same for you at home. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of 3 Peas in a Pod. Please remember that although all of the things we talk about are rooted in science and research, this podcast can never replace a conversation with a medical professional. If you are concerned about your health, please reach out to a medical professional and have that conversation. But we will see you in 2 weeks' time, where we will talk about how you can manage this time of your life and how you can thrive through menopause. So thank you so much for joining us.
And remember to click the subscribe button so you can hear when we have new episodes and tell your friends about it. Thank you for listening. Bye now.
See you soon. Bye.